Nothing to worry about, but, yeah.
Stress can do strange things to people's
It
bodies.
really can, it can mess with the art though, cause I have a stress issue, so. I have severe stress and severe depression, so I know it does kinda mess with the art though.
Hey.
How's it going, guys?
Hey, good morning.
Morning. Going all right?
You can sit up here if you want, so you can converse.
Any other,
easier. Or if you wanna sit in the corner,
last
you can.
places?
I'll use the restroom real quick, though.
We'll allow that.
Well, let's slide.
I guess I'll bring up the attendance.
You're holding it the wrong way.
I noticed that. Thank you, Dan.
I was gonna see how long it took you to realize you were holding it.
Not long, cause I didn't feel a button in the right place.
Need to, yeah, I do that sometimes.
Christian's got a new phone number, so.
Oh, okay.
And do you have Austin's phone number?
I do, at least I have a phone number, I send them the stuff. For some reason, I cannot put the two of them onto the group thing that I have, because I think it must be maxed out or something, or I don't, so I have them I'm just adding more people on a different one now. So it didn't come back, though, that it didn't go through, so I'll have to ask him. I couldn't.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, just doing that, what we were talking about the other day, is just making it a lot easier. And it doesn't have a max level either. But I think first we had like 30.
Thank you for the
people.
water.
We had like 30-something people in it,
Here,
so.
can you give me one?
I mean, it might make a lot easier, but
Well, if I get time, it only took me almost 2.5 hours to change my crazy, trip to go to Indiana. It was a Southwest problem, though, it wasn't me, but otherwise I might have done something.
Southwest can be a pain. I remember they were gonna charge me a
Good
while
morning,
back.
how are you today, Austin? Good.
They were gonna
Glad you're
charge me
here.
upwards of about $1,200 just for a round ticket, and I was like, I called them up, I was like, lower the honking price, I'm military. They're like, oh, we can't do that, I was like, too easy, I went to Delta. Oh, it cost me $800, but I was like, I'm not wasting $1,200.
Morning, how are you, Haley?
Just because y'all don't wanna lower the price of military service members. Any prayer requests, Hayden? Besides Hannah. Besides Hannah in college. Don't lie to me. I'll break you later. Don't worry.
Austin, I'm sorry, give me your last name again, will you?
Hubbard?
Hubbard. See if it's in here, or if I have to put it in again. Kristen, you're on now, so I think you have to be here 3 times evidently before.
Any other prayer requests? Besides praises? Going once? Going twice? All right. Horse shit. I can't say I didn't ask y'all. I don't know that. Gee, whiz. I wasn't even supposed to be on camera today. I was hoping Ryan was gonna shut today, but he never did.
Kristen, if you have a new number, I'll get it after class, okay?
I'll hear about it from Ryan
Did you
tomorrow.
get my
I mean, from Marco.
text a couple days ago?
I
You got it, he got it, nobody got it?
texted.
Okay. Austin, did you get it?
Yeah.
Okay, so your number's right. Christian's changed. Okay, we're starting to get into a little more controversial, interesting, different kinds of information. I named it Consequences of Sexual Freedom because it starts basically with casual sex between friends, which was something interesting, a term I had not heard of before. I guess it's now labeled. So anyway, and then it goes into sex trafficking, which kind of made me sick when I was doing it. I think you're gonna be sadly surprised at the amount of what's going on in the world. So let's pray before we start. Please.
I'm looking around, split.
Anyone wanna lead us in prayer?
Keep in mind that.
I'll do it.
All right, thanks, Garrett.
Dear Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for just bringing us all together, Lord. And thank you for the message that our leaders are going to give to us today. We just help Dave's mother as she's going finally getting better and getting through everything, Lord. We just help her to continue with her recovery. And we just help Grandpa as he still recovers as well, Lord. Please just help the unspoken ones to go through and to be solved, Lord. We just help us to learn a lot today. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
So we're doing that was about 2 lessons after this. I worked on it too. It was another interesting one.
Oh, Lordy.
Hope everyone's bright and cheery this morning. We're glad you're here and hope that maybe some more will join us as they gradually come on their time. So let's look. Someone want to read that for us?
Hookups and casual sex with friends or acquaintances, romantic relationships, or unwanted communications of sexual needs must be satisfied. Hookups are the solution.
Do you believe that? How many of you believe that? I read that and I was like, oh, okay, that's an interesting take on things. I think most of us would not go along with that. I think it brings a lot of complications, but let's see what it says. Anyone want to read this, please?
Hey.
Yes, sir.
They're looking for the young adult class. Do you know where that
Here.
is?
It's on the
Excuse me, it's down here. Yeah.
opposite end.
What's your last name again, buddy? Hey. Nathan Evans, there you
I think that's a need.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's been a while.
We're gonna be referencing 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse, starting in verses 8.
Is there a girlfriend coming in?
We're gonna be discussing some of the things Paul had to say
She may be-
considering these kind of relationships.
No way.
Okay, are we done with this then? We're gonna go through these first ones. They're kind of just an opening into the rest. Did you do the question at the end? Did you do the question?
Not yet.
Okay.
For the previous slide, let's go back there. This is casual sex. Where, can you tell me some happenings in the Bible where this took place?
At the Church of Corinth,
Okay?
the church stopped, putting it on a pedestal, and it kind of just became like a never. It was their biggest problem, is what I remember. They were just having sex everywhere. It was.
Yeah, whenever they wanted, wherever they wanted, pretty much.
Ephesus, you remember Ephesus was a center of worship of they called her Artemis in Rome, and they called her Diana in Greek. But what were the temples? You guys remember that? The temples had priestesses where you go and worship. So, what other places? There's multiple places.
Is Abraham and his servant, whatever her name was, I can't remember.
Well, that's
Is
a
that
little
the
different
example?
issue, but you're close. Somebody look up Ezekiel 38:25.
Christian had his hand
Go ahead,
up.
Christian.
Well, you were asking about like where sexual intercourse, et cetera, in the Bible, the Sodom and Gomorrah, and the rest of gay people there too.
Not only there were several other instances mentioned where that happened. 38, Exodus 38:25. You remember the story of Moses? He goes up on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, and God's instructing him on the rules that he has to follow. He's writing the Ten Commandments for him. Well, when he comes back down, what's he see?
Well, they're making an idol, they're making the bull, right?
Okay, they made a bull.
Yeah, they'd already made the bull and they were worshiping it.
Okay, and they're partying, right?
Yeah.
38-25.
The silver obtained from those of the community who were counted in the census was 100 talents and 1,775 shekels, according to the sanctuary shekel.
That is not the one I had in mind.
What should it say?
What is the passage again?
38:25 though.
It describes the party in which they were participating.
Yeah, it's Ezekiel.
It's Ezekiel?
Yeah, you got the wrong.
Oh, he said
You're all right.
Oh, okay.
You s- he said,
Exodus.
he's,
You're all
I
right.
said Ezekiel first, but then he said Exodus,
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
I was like, oh. Exodus.
We're gonna get this right.
I was like, let's see what that has to do with the lesson.
You're dropping eyes, Hayes.
Gary.
Alright, so is it Exodus 38 and what?
25.
25, okay. The silver obtained,
Ezekiel.
No, Ezekiel.
what, there you go, Ezekiel 38.
Exodus, Exodus.
That's what-
Exodus.
I was just
That's what he
saying
read was
Exodus.
Exodus. You got it mixed up.
And Ezekiel doesn't have a 38:25.
He
goes
just
to
read Exodus.
38:23.
Okay,
Dave.
while he figures it out,
Well, I go
we're
that,
gonna
we'll
go
go
on.
on.
Okay.
While Dave tries to figure it out.
So, did you guys read this while I was out in the hall?
Not yet.
Okay, who wants to read this for us?
Section, you got it?
Okay, I'll do it.
If you want to. Go ahead.
Sexualizing friendships is the new normal. More than half of millennials agree with this. The low-risk way to meet sexual needs, but casual sex wrecks friendships, causes jealousies, awkwardness, and confusion. The longer this idea is believed, the more normal it seems to teens. No boundaries or rules. People are asking, what good is it if sex is only leaves a trail of pain, confusion, and broken friendship?
In relationships.
In your experiences, are you seeing this?
Yeah. I know it sounds weird, but yeah.
Okay.
I've heard from people who, even those who have had like close dating relationships for a long time and they've ended up doing so, they've said like, when they broke up, you're like, this hurts even more. Like they said that they could tell that having sex was making the relationship a lot deeper, and so then when they broke up, it was like they'd been married almost, like
Yeah.
it was like they got a divorce.
That's kind of what I find too, that a lot of people, even if it's not like they have sex at all, some people will do this kind of, we have to be so close and we have to be this, that it gets to the point where if they break up or even just don't see each other, they begin to almost like feel as if everything's been ruined.
And, in college, I see a lot of my friends in the groups that I'm making, like two of them will just have casual sex, and then I'll never see them talk to each other again. So it's like they had a good friendship, then them having sex just like ruined it. They're not talking anymore, not even barely looking at each other. It's like they made it awkward.
Yeah, they can literally try to avoid each other.
Yeah.
I've counseled kids in high school that have gone through this. I was interested when I found that it was actually titled now as casual sex. And unfortunately, it is reaching down into middle school.
Oh yeah, it is. I'm actually a babysitter and slash a mentor slash tutor. And I got this one 13-year-old kid, name is Ruben. He literally is at that point where he's having to struggle with the quote unquote casual sex. And he's got questions about it. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's that I'm not trying to be a stupid idiot, but at the exact same time, I'm having to kind of figure out his mindset and what he's going through so that, hopefully I can, but I understand what you're talking about now.
The problem that you find is that the emotional development And the mental development is not the same as
Yeah.
the sexual desire. And so people are getting involved in situations and, on a whim, or just, you know, a feel of a need, and then they don't know how to deal with it afterwards. And it causes a lot more kinds of problems. Anybody else comment on this?
What's this attitude missing about the human condition?
I guess the importance of relationships. I kind of find it more interesting because, you know, between some of the more adult groups and some of the younger groups, there's probably that line right towards the bottom that says no boundaries and no rules. Most of the parents or such adults pretty much grow out of this and understand that there has to be rules. You can't instantly go with this. And you have to, it's kind of like romance. You have to basically get close to each other and realize that it's that. But when they break up, they understand that it's because it didn't work out, not just because everything's confusing. Whereas, yeah, they're kind of young. In this age, they don't really understand as much of the world. And especially in this day and age where a lot of things are getting more gray area.
Right, because society's saying it's okay.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing it. And it's getting to be more everybody all the time. So,
What's the purpose of sex in the Bible?
I guess procreate. That's about what I can say.
That's one,
Pleasure.
pleasure.
It's pleasure, but it's supposed to be, it's special, you know what I mean? It's not something that's just, you know,
Isn't
you,
it to sanctify your marriage?
Yeah.
yeah.
So we're talking here something that, and I think somebody's already mentioned it, it increases the intimacy of the relationship. So that there's more than just a friendship now, there's more than just an acquaintance. There's something shared between two people that is not normally done until those two people have relationships that are intellectual and personality and emotional before that's accomplished. So it's, if we ignore human experiences and say, I want intimacy, I want to be close to someone that I can trust. I want trust in my life with at least somebody. I don't want to be alone. And if they're using sex to do that, will that achieve it? This is what they're asking.
Maybe once or twice, I guess.
Intimate relationship.
But eventually, I guess if you do it too much, you're not gonna be intimate with anybody. It's gonna, cause they talk about your soul, whenever, you know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
I've heard it before. You know,
It's like,
yes,
there's specific hormone that
Yeah.
releases or whatever when you do it, and then the more you do it, the less it releases, so the less attached you get.
like,
Yeah,
that's a
and-
scientific explanation. But there's also that, you have a piece, it's like,
Ties together.
whenever you have those relationships, you're giving away, you know, part of your soul is strung to them.
It's kind of like that joke about in high school with all the guys that try to get as many girls as they can to go on dates with them. It's kind of like that. Because it gets to that point where it's not about really meeting a good person, it's just about having the number tied to it.
right,
Mhm.
the bragging rights.
So there's an
Yeah.
ego, there's an ego
Exactly.
there.
Yeah.
All right, and we are gonna go into the sex and the marriage and all that stuff later on. The reason that it comes up here is because of the problem it's leading to in our society. And the casual sex, the desire for it, the searching for it with teens, young adults, is leading to a problem of a poor nation. So who would read this for us?
Searching for sports and games, coaches of apps, barely dressed women to Jay-Z song. $8 million porn business, fastest growing segment of the entertainment industry. Porn is consumed by more than 50 million Americans, the size of iTunes, digital sales, and the bottled water industry. This doesn't include ubiquitous free porn available at the click of a mouse. Porn is a normal part of adolescence. Too much makes you creepy. Porn is in the top 5 of possible immoral actions.
All right, so we have a slide in a couple minutes. We talked about the Super Bowl and what went on there, and so we actually inputted, Dave put a couple slides in that we'll go into in a little while.
I think that $8 billion porn business, I think that should be $8 billion.
It's
I think
low.
it's
These were, well, and it goes on to some of it
Yeah.
in the other slides. This is just from what they're seeing, like on the internet business and things like that, that people are going to. It's the fastest growing segment in the entertainment industry. You'll see some more statistics
What-
and things.
I got a
that
question for you on, there may be some people in here involved in some of this, but when you watch a movie or something on TV, is that real?
No.
So why would porn be any different? Okay, so just so we know where porn is, it's as fake, it implies the same unrealness that many movies do too.
So you can go on and click. Years ago, when I was teaching middle school, which was years ago, 20 years ago
You don't
probably.
need to say.
We did a, yeah, I can, that's all right. We did a show, or the kids were reading, the show's on right now again,
Which show?
with the dog,
Call of the Wild.
Call of the Wild.
All the way? Yeah.
So the English teacher, we were in groups and she asked me to go help her in the lab because it was the first time the kids, and they were 7th graders, were going in and they were looking, and so they clicked in Call of the Wild. It wasn't 1 second till a hand goes up, I go over and I'm like, whoa, go out of that site. The firewall for the district didn't stop it, and there was pornography back then even, and it's getting worse. And it's so available, you see ads pop up on different things, places you go. So it's something that is prevalent, and they are targeting young kids, young guys, young girls. So who would want to read this, and we'll talk about it?
Moral stigma. Porn and soft porn, sexual images and situations on TV, in movies, and video games is loosening people. Half of US teens and adults say it doesn't bother them. Making objects of women or men is no longer something to be ashamed of. 7 out of 10 US adults, 8 out of 10 practicing Christians, and almost all evangelicals say it has an adverse effect. There you go. Losers are wives, mothers, daughters. Does this contribute to sex trafficking?
Now, it's gonna come in that there are guys that are included in this. There are boys and men that are sex trafficked. Now, do you think you're being conditioned by watching television, movies, and things like that?
Yes,
I think they're trying to.
100%.
I mean, if you think about it, I've probably seen this a lot more with parents and people that talk about it, is that most of the issue with stuff like this is because often you can Google anything and it'll appear. I've seen many talks about, for example, Valentine's Day. People will try to look up something for Valentine's Day, but because of how search engine works, it doesn't know what to cycle through and what not. It's kind of that issue of, you could Google anything and something will happen. Sometimes you're not even looking for it, you're on something else and it'll happen. Again, it's that whole thing of, often it's just a little seed that starts. And that's kind of why it's the whole thing of, it doesn't bother them, is because they've gotten used to it being around. And that sucks, because that's not how it's supposed to work. People think it's part of life when that's not how it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a thing. It's a sin for a reason. It's not supposed to be something where, oh, it appeared in a movie, it's not real, it's fine. When you're realizing that, you saying that is essentially letting it pass. It's some of the other ones. You can't just say it's not supposed, because it's fake, it's not, it's okay. It's not how that works.
Think of a show that you watched, maybe there's not a lot of them on, but there are some that maybe a couple years ago you watched, and if it's progressed. I can tell you one, if you watch 911, the original one, and then you watch 911 Austin, whoa, did it change. I mean, bam, the first thing. And we turned it off and that was it. Have you watched a show that you've gradually seen either more discussion on things that probably, are better left not discussed, or you're seeing more things, even commercials. You turn the TV on and sometimes I'm like, how can that commercial be on in the middle of the day?
Mm-hmm.
How many of you really have noticed in the last couple of years, because I have you noticed a change?
Yeah.
You're all shaking your heads, okay. How many of you turn it off when you see it?
Most of the time I just kinda mute it.
Or do you
like, look away.
mute it or
Well, I
ignore
Skip
it?
over it or look away, yeah.
The thing is, the more,
No, Siri.
No,
Siri.
Siri, he is not talking to you. Okay, sorry.
That was his random. Serial alert.
the more it shows up, the less it bothers you. So whereas I used to just, I see one thing and I'm like, screw this, and I just turn off the TV. I was just like, okay, well, I'm just gonna try and fast forward, you know what I mean? Where it used to just be like, jump ship, and I was like, I'm gonna just try and skim through that part, you know what I mean? There's, like, it isn't a tolerance to it, but it's,
Trying to avoid it.
yeah, but
Yeah.
like, compared to Fool, now I'm still giving this thing my time, I'm just not watching that part, you know what I mean?
What I also think sometimes too is, you need to educate yourself on stuff. Some people are like, oh, well, I don't wanna see that and disturbing. For me, it's like, okay, well, I'm learning on something, regardless if I know it's wrong or not, it's still educating me, so I have that, I guess that mentality of like, I'm gonna look at it, even if it's disturbing, okay, or whatever it is, that some people like, your discretion is advised, I'm still learning on something. If that
Okay,
makes sense.
and it might be a benefit to
Yeah,
help,
for me.
but sometimes it also pulls us in, right? It might be to get the knowledge. Making objects of women or men, is that what's happening? That we used to be kind of ashamed of it? I mean, they didn't used to put people on TV with underwear ads.
Well, but they did sculpt naked men and women, so.
Talking
It's
about
been around
these-
since Sumerian time, actually.
Okay.
Sumerians had love priestesses as well, and it was commemorated in their art.
And I wasn't talking
Yeah.
about the porn, of TV, but like, I like to watch live PD and 911 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It educates me
Right.
more on stuff, but with other stuff like, yeah, you see some pretty crazy stuff on commercials.
How many have you watched old TV serials like Lucille Ball or Dick Van Dyke, where you have married
Okay, but
couples on
these
TV?
were a chase period.
Now, I'm going somewhere with this.
That's not me.
My phone.
Okay, I was gonna say,
And-
this is not me.
When they go to bed at night, if you've watched these, do you know what situation was when they went to bed at night?
They were in separate beds.
They were in separate beds. The TVs were so concerned about public opinion of their show that they didn't even go to the fact that husbands and wives sleep together. But then they started moving, and I wanna emphasize the direction that Hollywood is taking society, because I don't believe society is directing Hollywood. I think Hollywood is trying to influence society.
Through celebrities.
No, now it's like 10 minutes into the show, lock eyes, clothes just get thrown across the screen and
Yeah. Yeah, they're showing things that they want people to accept, because they may be involved in those activities. So it's in all of this stuff you're looking at, somebody can read 1 Corinthians 6:15. When we get involved in these activities, check out what Paul has instructed us.
himself. Shall I then take the members of Christ and unite them with the prostitute? Never.
Keep going, keep going.
Do you not know that he who unites himself with a prostitute is one with her body? For it is said that two have become one flesh, and whoever is united with the Lord is one with him in spirit. Or in the spirit, as my undernote says on that.
And 18, finish it.
Flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against their own body.
Which is pretty much what Nathan said.
I was
Part
trying to
of
say
you-
it.
That's what you were trying to say, and you did it well. So, when we look at how many adults, Christians, and even all the evangelicals, the conservative Christians, say it has an adverse effect. But how many of us turn it off, call and complain about it? Or are we apathetic?
Oh, I do that on Snapchat. Oh, I put in a complaint every single time on Snapchat.
Good.
I'm good about
I
it.
mean, there are like report features on most websites for that
Yeah.
type of stuff. You can just click a couple buttons, say, this is not what's supposed to be here, and then it'll get reported, so.
But even now, like, with some, for Snapchat, for example,
Well,
like, some
yeah,
things,
it'll-
I'll try and report it, and I'll be like, oh, you can't report this, you bigot. It's like, it's not even a complaint option.
All right, so the biggest losers in this, because there's more women and girls and kids involved, are wives, mothers, and daughters. But does this conditioning that we've been going through over the years, does this contribute to sex trafficking? How many of you would say yes, just out of curiosity? How many would you say probably not? How many say for sure not? Okay, let's look on. Okay, who wants to read this?
I guess I'll do it again. Women dehumanize. Our culture objectifies women's bodies. Society's dominant message, women exist for men's pleasure. Viewing another human being as an object erases the image of God, and a sin against that person and the creator. So what about the halftime Super Bowl show?
Okay.
So how does, you've heard the term sex sells, right? And it's very obvious. I mean, you look at the commercials that are gathering tons of money, the porn industry, there's tons of money,
Well, you can
movies, entertainment, magazines.
put Hayden at a lemonade stand, give him 3 hours, put a really pretty girl at a lemonade stand, give him 3 hours, who's gonna sell the most lemonade?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
You
Hayden.
know, pretty girl.
And it does go with guys, but the prevalence is with women.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
And if it's a pretty woman versus a not so pretty woman,
Mhm.
So what are we telling people when we see this? What are they telling people?
It kind of comes back to that big issue of trying to saying that the only people that, or only women that matter are the ones beautiful. That seems to be the issue in this society. Things like where women will try to get skinnier by not eating any food, and even things where they say, I don't matter. There is a big stigma against, like, some of the more, like, normal people, women, because a lot of it comes down to basically just, people have this hate against them just because they think that they want someone that's chiseled and stuff for someone that's just a normal girl. And then they're like, can I just have someone beautiful, and they hate the men. It goes back and forth. It's more bigger on men since, again, this is the big thing. But again, a lot of the men basically just fling that thing onto the women saying, then don't ask for guys that are chiseled.
In your relationships with women, most of the guys here, we got a couple young ladies. Is appearance a primary issue on how you approach a girl?
I hope not.
Most definitely. If I'm not attracted to the person, it's not gonna work out initially.
She's not gonna start a conversation.
I mean, of course, I would wanna, you know, date someone that's, you know, not real good looking. I'll date a girl that, of course, is pretty, but if she doesn't have a good personality, then I'm like, peace.
Yeah.
I'm kinda with that,
The
yeah.
personality is extremely important as well, but that's not what's gonna catch my eye.
Wait,
It's the-
Are we
I
talking,
want-
if you can't live with a person's personality, then it doesn't matter what your looks are. Look at
Right.
But I
Hollywood in
also
general.
wanna be able to wake up every morning and be like, dang, that's mine.
are we talking about friendships here, or are we talking about dating relationships?
Either.
Every
or.
relationship
Okay,
starts, they start with something. Either it's
Yeah.
sitting next to them in class and you're kind of forced into communicating with each other, or it could be something as just as a casual
It-
walk by at a restaurant.
It does not matter if a girl is pretty or not pretty, whenever it comes to if I'll talk to them, like if I'm in a class with them. All it really comes down to is their body language and like what kind of an attitude they have. And then it's like, if I'm going to, that's the biggest thing, is
Yeah.
if they have this insane attitude, ooh, heck no. I'm not doing
Appearance
it.
is
I'm the
important.
same way, like,
Appearance is important.
Personality's more
Yeah,
important
I-
than just friends for me.
yeah, I
For
told
me, for me.
I think it's like a 70-30, like personality is like 70%, but the looks are still like a 30%.
Oh, yeah,
If
I
you
told my
want good
girlfriend-
looks,
Okay, you
but
don't want a dog.
As Christians,
Okay,
we should be basing it more
Yeah,
on their
yeah.
personality and how they choose to
Yeah.
live their life.
It's pretty much, yeah,
As opposed to
like what
just
you said.
looks.
It's
Okay,
kinda
what-
like you don't want a dog, but you also were pretty sure that like person who looks like they're on a Hollywood movie is
Yeah.
probably not a little
Not,
sketchy.
yeah.
And none of us are Adonises. Well, I'm not.
Speak for yourself. They did.
And so the reverse has to be in case for us too. So if we're approaching people based upon their ideal appearance, which is
Yeah.
being broadcast to us daily, then we really don't measure up to that ideal appearance of a male figure.
They might not be interested in
And
it.
if that's
You
your,
got
if
these
that's your
things.
primary thing though, you got problems of your own.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
I think that's where I want you guys to go, is that if you're hung up on someone, you can expect to be treated the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's,
Heck, yeah.
And remember, especially you girls, when you're looking for some guy, you wanna look for somebody that can make a decent living, not that's gonna flip burgers at Burger King like he did when he was in high school.
I was working. and
But
I-
you
That's
want,
true,
yeah.
he was working.
But
I
you-
was working
But
for
you
the
want
last 2 years,
somebody
too.
that has at least something up above that can make a good living for you the rest of your
Mhm.
life, I'm just kidding.
I invented the double
I
whopper.
can flip around.
This is back in the sixties, yeah, 67,
Late 60s,
68.
yeah.
I'm 16 years old, working at Burger King. They're selling single whoppers, and so for lunch every day, we go in and we fix ourselves doubles. We're growing guys, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And somebody picked up on that.
The
so-
most important thing is the character of the person that you're gonna marry.
That's right.
yeah,
Because
personality.
the skin is gonna get old.
Mhm.
You might marry somebody and when she was in her twenties, she's smoking hot. And then 30 or 40 years later, she ain't what she was back then. So what's gonna matter is, who is she, you know? Who is she in her relationship with the Lord? What kind of character she has? You know, what kind of friend? You wanna marry your best friend, because when all the, you know, excitement wears out, and the love you're gonna have a good partner to do life with. Somebody that's your best friend, that you can work through things, that you can face life with, and you can face death with, that you can grow through life together in everything. And looks won't get you that. And, you know, like, they had this thing on TV where this guy and this lady, got married, and she ended up getting burnt. And he married her, but fifth or sixth degree burns were her flesh, where when you look at her, you couldn't even recognize the flesh of her. And they asked, you know, and he still loved her because he looked at who she was, the beauty of who she was. It wasn't about her skin or anything else. It was, he said, they go, how could you still be you know, and he said, you know, I see the beauty of who she is, and I hope she could see the beauty in who I am, because I got a few wrinkles myself. That's who you want to be with, is somebody that you love deeper than the skin of that person, but the heart and the soul, you know, because that's what matters. That skin doesn't matter.
We asked about the objectification in the Super Bowl, and one of the things that there's a lot of praise for how talented the folks are doing that Super Bowl, but this exemplifies, I think, the pressure that young girls in particular are being exposed to as far as what appropriate behavior is. And when this Super Bowl show came on, a lot of people were surprised at the content of the show because it turned to be very, very sexual. But there's one image. Go ahead,
I'm gonna
the
do
first
it,
one.
well, I wanna, before we leave this, I just want, where might be, there it is. Oh, it won't show up there.
Okay. What are you looking at?
I wanted to highlight. Okay, the last two things here. I just want us to think of this as we're going on. Viewing another human being as an object erases the image of God, because we are made in the image of God. And a sin against that person is also a sin against the Creator. So, and we'll go on with that. So here was one of the,
Now this is an image that was shown many times, but they're both shaking their butts, of course. The one on the left is carrying a mic that's shaped like a dildo. So she's singing to something that's shaped like a dildo. So
You can't
here
see
we
it
have
very
behavior
well.
that is acceptable at prime time Super Bowl. Well, of course,
How
we
did
know
that-
there's a lot of guys watching it, but there's families watching this stuff. And then one of the performers gets on a stripper pole and shows how good she is on a pole, and she's doing this.
That happened at the Super
This-
Bowl?
this
yeah, this was on
alone-
TV.
This is on national.
Let me show you
I was
a
driving
little
home
bit
from
of the
work.
rest
I
of
was
this
driving.
This is
picture.
on national TV.
What do you see? This is a
Nothing
disturbing
good.
picture for prime time.
What do you see below her? Can you tell? It's kind of hard in this picture, but,
What are the rest of the guys doing?
no, these were young girls.
I can't tell who it is, by
Laying on the
the
bottom
way the
of the
colors
They're
are.
laying
on
down.
down to her.
Yeah, tell they were laying down, but can't really see.
So here she is forming a cross, and she has
Oh,
people,
wow, I didn't-
she has people bowing down and falling down at her feet. This is a very disturbing image to me, that you could do this on prime time and have that imitation taking place. Is that, so that, it wasn't just sexual, there's that, and millions of people saw it, and they said, okay, yeah, that's acceptable. So,
Okay, who wants to read this? This is a reminder to you.
The need for good faith is enormous. Christian community, household of God, is the only remedy.
So, we went online and we called in about the halftime show, and I know a lot of other people did too. And people posted things on Facebook. Not that it probably matters, but I even went so far, you know, as to get a hold of Pepsi because they sponsored the halftime show. And I felt like they knew and they should have been responsible too. As long as we ignore things like that, or just let it happen, it's gonna keep happening.
It's gonna keep going.
It's your generation that's gonna have to try to help put a squelch on that. Because if you guys just don't even think about it, you know, and we turned it off, cause our grandkids were there, and then we went back, and because of everybody putting stuff on, it was like, oh my goodness. And that's just one instance.
before you go there,
Yeah, I just stopped.
the author of the book Good Faith had a company do a survey among high school and college age adults. And he said their first 5, there's a conflict, and this conflict is not new. This has been going on since day one, basically, of people who want to follow God and follow his constructs and his instructions, and those who choose to rebel. this conflict is between the Christian community and the secular. And obviously the secular is winning because there's many in the Christian community that think stuff like this is okay. But when they did the survey, of these young people, they said, what are your top most moral, goals? And number one, stealing. They agreed that stealing was a bad thing to do. It's number one. Number two was adultery. They viewed adultery as very, very bad. These are young folks that haven't had the chance to do adultery, but I think they've seen the damage that adultery does in relationships. Number three was lying. Surprisingly enough, I mean, because everybody lies. But apparently, I think lying big is what gets us the worst. Number four, Florida, not recycling. That's a moral code. It's something that has been shoved at us so much that it's now something that should be illegal, not.
I mean, if you think about like our oceans and stuff, I'm not surprised why we have that type of thing. Yeah.
We're supposed to be good stewards, but I wouldn't say that that's
More important than
that
other
high
things.
on the list, you know what I mean?
And number five was viewing porn, so there's their, in this survey, there's this selected scattering of young folks' priorities in life. So it's eye-opening to think that there's other things that could be on this list that are not there.
So this happened like 2.5 weeks ago. Hunter's mom's sister's friend's daughter was at a nail salon in Cedar Park at 1890, and this woman came in and was like, "Hey, can I use your phone?" So she let her use her phone, and then like 2 hours later, her mom got got an email saying that the Life 360 app, that the tracking email had been changed. So her phone was now set up so that she could get tracked by whoever.
Whoever was trying to do it.
Yeah. So
Which
that
goes
happened in
into
Cedar Park.
this, yeah.
It's not on the news, it makes me mad.
Yeah, because obviously they're doing it. And
Yeah.
where are they going? Why would they go to a nail salon?
There's a lot of young people who do use the nail salon.
Yep.
My girlfriend does it all the time.
Yeah,
And I tell her, I'm like, turn your honking phone off
Yeah.
before you even go in there. It's just like, why? I'm like, honey, I love you, but you don't realize what the junk that's going on in this world. People are gonna try to take advantage of you, especially because I'm not the first, I'm not there. Secondly, you're in a different state, in a different town, so I'm not gonna be able to be there to protect you. If somebody tries to freaking, do something to you.
Did I know right?
yeah, and
So-
kids especially, and we'll go, as we go through this, I know my granddaughters, we have 4 granddaughters. The youngest one is just turned 8, oldest one just turned 18, and then a 15 and a 14-year-old. And sometimes I think they resent their parents, putting controls on different things, not, allowing certain things. And I told them, I said, you don't understand that when you go into places on the internet, and there might be a young guy saying, "Oh, you're cute, and let's talk," and they'll talk to him, and they act like they're 14 or 15 years old, and it could be a dirty old guy Dave's age. You don't know who they are. So, and that's great that you brought that up, because it happens everywhere, and the U.S. is one of the biggest ones where there's sex trafficking. So let's read, we'll stop a few way through this, but someone want to start on some of the statistics?
92% in Los Angeles courts for child sex trafficking are African American or Latino, 52% African American. 50 to 90% have been involved in child welfare system. 76% of the refugees in the Mediterranean. 40% of homeless youth, LGBTQ, and over 50% of gay or bisexual boys. 20% of homeless youth, 14% of runaways.
Okay, let's stop there. of them targeted so much? What do you think?
We don't need money.
Okay? Look at that, 50 to 90% have been involved in child welfare system. It's really sad when you think, you know, that we have foster homes. Some kids are in 4, 5, or 6 or more foster homes. They do background checks and stuff of foster homes. They also do background checks for people working in churches, and what still happens?
Not the friends of people for foster homes or the friends for people in churches, it's just.
And, yeah, and some of the people themselves, even though they have a background check, where was it, we were listening yesterday, and we said, there was a high percentage of things going on, even back, like, the generation before this generation, that they're finding out now that, you know, people are saying that they were abused. At a school for the deaf, you know, people take their kids there so they can learn, you know, sign language, how to do things. They're entrusted to these places, and this is what happens. And I'm sure that more than 20% of the homeless youth are sex trafficked nowadays, because this statistic was like from 4 years ago.
Oh, yeah, we're way screwed up now.
You know,
We are in
and
2012.
and you see the homeless, and you see the homeless encampments, and there's young people, younger than you guys, that are there. And then the problem is, even though these are reported, do you think all of them are reported? I'm sure they're not. Okay, go ahead, Jesse.
Teen sex trafficking is real, scary, and devastating physically and mentally. At least 100,000 U.S. children are exploited in prostitution every year. Victims up to 25 years of age, mostly started before 14 years old. 600,000 to 800,000 women, 59% men, 14% girls, 17% boys, 10% a year in 2012. Stats adding internal victims to 2 to 4 million annually. 50% of these are children, 76% of these start on the internet with girls.
How many of you would have guessed that? Or do we even think about it?
Like, that's not something I think about every day.
Right. It's affecting thousands of kids, boys, girls, men, women, every day. And I was shocked when I found out the U.S. was the
Just about
main
the
one.
first one, yeah.
We are the first. If you have friends, if you have brothers and sisters, younger, or cousins, or whatever, or like you say, family, extended family, they need to be aware of what's going on. Because you don't want to scare people. It's kind of like back in the 70s and 80s when they put all the statistics about drugs up, you know? And it was like a scare tactic in the schools.
Yeah.
But this is something that just is going on farther and farther and more and more. So these are 2019 stats that I found online. Who wants to read those?
Before we get into that, sexual slavery is just one type of slavery. They've been enslaved for a purpose. And it's, in concept to the human soul, it's no different than any other form of slavery. There's currently over 44 countries on earth that have no penalties for human slavery.
Really?
They say they're not in favor of it, but if you do that, you're not punished. So you have 44 societies that basically say slavery's okay, go ahead and do it, and it's done. So there's in general human slavery still existing in at least 44 countries with the permission of the authorities, basically. Who benefits from slavery?
The slavers,
Okay, that's one group.
Yes.
What, how do they benefit?
well, I'm guessing that they're making money.
Lots of money.
Right there with the brothel owner, it says they made 80,000 in one day.
One month,
Yeah.
one month.
Oh,
Which is
one second.
still insane.
Who else benefits? Who cares about the slaves in this case? Purveyors don't, do they? No, they want the money. How about the people that, for the sex business, take advantage of the sex? Do they care about slaves?
I doubt it if there's that many.
I mean,
They
local
don't
health
care.
worker wants to get into it, and
Like, if they cared about them, they wouldn't have them be slaves if they cared about them.
Okay. So they don't, yeah, they just,
You know what I
they're here
mean?
for a purpose, to use somebody to satisfy their
Yeah.
desires, right?
Yeah.
So the slaves are in a situation that they have no control, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a minute. They must conform, and they must endure. Where in the Bible do we find references to slaves and their situation? Because, believe me, there were slaves all through biblical history.
Yeah.
What did Moses do?
Free his,
Free.
free people.
Free the okay, and how long were they in the desert?
4 years.
How many? 4 or 40?
40.
40, okay. And did they wanna stay there in the desert? Were they happy?
No, I'd say they're pretty mad.
They wanted to go back, they were so upset, cause they missed the food, they missed the smell of the stuff. And here they had been working as slaves and they still wanted to go back.
There was some 400 odd years.
Yeah, and some of these people, the one thing he didn't bring up, some of these, especially girls in some countries, are sold into slavery by who?
Their parents.
Their parents, yeah.
So we get this question, why does God allow this activity? Because obviously he's allowed it to happen since man first broke away from it.
Well, it didn't always seem like it was that terrible. Like, there's indentured servitude, you know what I mean, where you're kind of like a slave.
Economically tied to somebody.
Yeah.
We have indentured servitude today because people are living day to day on their wages. They cannot quit a job because
Yep.
they can't afford to live. So in a
I
sense,
know that.
we can go there too.
I heard, I had a U.S. history class, and they kind of explained how it went from indentured slavery to just regular slavery. It was basically just, most of the people with indentured slaves would pay for someone to come over here, but because they wouldn't live the full term of how long their contract was, they would make benefits from that. But eventually they started living longer and being able to go through all 7 years. And so they stopped using indentured servitude and just went to slavery, since we don't have to pay them anything, and there's no benefits in there's no problems in losing them.
You remember the story of Jacob and how he saw a woman and liked her and went to work for her father,
Mhm.
Rachel, you remember her?
Yeah.
What's the details on that?
Didn't.
How many years did he work to be able to marry?
Total
Like,
or,
it
total
was
or just
7
the
years,
first
just-
time?
Well, he had to
Rachel.
work 7 years,
Just
and then they
Rachel.
were like, psych, you don't get to marry her.
Well, he married somebody.
Yeah.
He had the option to, but.
No, he married somebody, and then when she lifted the veil, it's her sister, her older sister, because it's more, his culture says, older sisters go first. So how many more years did he work to be able to get Rachel?
It's another full term.
So he's an indentured servant, so this stuff's been going on
Yeah.
a long, long time. So, in the New Testament, we have Paul giving instructions to husbands, wives, children, and slaves.
Mhm.
And so the instructions to slaves are almost the same.
And so their
You're,
parents.
you're in a situation you cannot control, you're not gonna do anything to change your situation except come to God. So even though we say this is awful, this is terrible, this has been going on throughout human history, and Paul's instructions are saying it's more important for you to come to God than it is for you to be free. So just so everybody's got that importance, God is number one, your freedom is number 2 or 3 or 4.
Somebody real quick, look, cause these are fast verses, look up Psalms 82:4, who wants to do that? Okay,
I'll do the second
Psalms 35:10, okay,
I'll do
Dan
James
and
one.
James. Okay, and while you're doing that, trafficking is when commercial sex is induced by force, fraud, or coercion. And it can be any of those 3. More than 4 million victims globally in 2016. At least 9,000 illicit spas in the US alone. Now, you know, some of them are spas where you go get a massage, but but that's not the 9,000. These 9,000 are spas where ill repute goes on. At least, because that's the ones that are known. Sort of like, you know, if you ever watched the show, what was the one with, what's the name? And it was the Best Little Whorehouse in Texas.
Alright.
There's a story behind what. Brothel owners in 1 month earn, this is a minimum, of $80,000 if they have 20 sex slaves with 14 people a day that visit them. So that's just some facts that you can think on. Okay, Hayden?
I got the 82:4. Rescue the weak and the needy, deliver them from the hand of the wicked.
So is it our job to worry about these people? Should we be concerned?
Yes.
Okay. So Psalms 35, Dan?
My whole being will exclaim, who is you, Lord? Who is like you, Lord? You rescue the poor from those too strong for them, and the poor and the needy from those who rob them.
All right, so these people that are in the trafficking, and you'll go sometimes into stores, and you'll go into a restroom even and see signs about if you need help, call this number. There are some organizations now, just in the last few years, that are trying to help them. Sometimes be aware of the people you see around you. Just be aware of, are they needing help or not? Don't get yourself too involved, but you can always call the police, right? James 1:27.
Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world.
So basically, some of the things we're going through are to enlighten you about what's going on in society, and then I think that when we're enlightened, we have a little bit of responsibility and maybe just need to pray for them and to pray what we can do, what we can be aware of. Anybody else, any comments, questions? All right, let's pray. And then I want to make one announcement about March 8th for you. Come on up. Jesse. Okay, anybody want to close this in now?
Dear Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for what you're doing in our lives, Lord. Help us continue to make the decisions you would, Father, and lead us not to temptation. Amen.
Amen. Okay, March 8th, we're going to do pizza here. Afterwards, we're going to do it here at church. We're going to bring games, and we'll be upstairs, so you can bring friends, whatever. And so figure, whenever you're ready to go. I know Hannah's going to be here and some other people too. And so we can have a good time. I'll bring Uno and Flip Uno and Bananagram. If you have games you want to bring them. At 6 or 6:30,